Thank you all for coming, and it's so nice to see so many people here. And I'd like to start off, obviously, by congratulating Elizabeth Karlsen here, who's the producer of the film. And Ed Lachman here, who's the cinematographer. And we wish them the best of luck as they're both nominated for BAFTA this year. So congratulations.
And for an Academy.
So we've brought over Ed Lachman from Los Angeles for the BSC show. We did a seminar on Friday, and then he was at the show looking at all the equipment, and I was with him, and it was fascinating being with another cinematographer, looking at all the digital equipment we have there, the 2K, the 4K, the 8K, the 3 million ASA camera, and it was fascinating listening to his comments during all this, because ultimately, and this is what I was talking about in my talk the other day on Friday, ultimately, we are cinematographers that create images. And these images are more than just straight images. They're images that provoke emotion, provoke something outside the image itself. And that's the hard bit. That's the bit that we have to create. And I think this film is, as I've written here somewhere, this film really shows how you can encapsulate a period, and the 50s period. And on leaving the BSC show, we went to see, for stimulation, an exhibition at the Photographics Gallery here. And it's by a stills photographer called Sol Leiter. He's a street photographer of the 1950s. He only was acknowledged as a fabulous photographer at the age of 70. And I could see in these images, and going with him round, it was fabulous going with him round, because a lot of his images inspired him, with a lot of other photographers who he'll talk about, inspired him. And we stopped off at one image which was completely out of focus, but yet mesmerizing, yet so wonderfully powerful. And through the exhibition also, this photographer had an extraordinary way of actually creating color through ectochrome. And I quite like to start talking. We will talk about your relationship with Todd, etc. But talking because you really looked at that, and you really studied how, on 16mm, you could create that ectochrome look and the color, and create a color, because it's richer than you would normally have on a 16mm. How did you do it?
Well, I always play with color, temperature, and gels. And so by putting color into the negative, then I could mute it and take it out, and there was still something there. But there's something, again, back to the photographer's gallery. You know, we did reference Sol Leiter in Mildred Pierce and in this film, and also these mid-century photographers that happen, a lot of them happen, photojournalists that happen to be women, like Esther Bubley and Helen Levitt and Ruth Orkin, and then later we were referencing Vivian Maier. You know, she was much later, but also, you know, the idea that she was, you know, taking pictures of herself in reflections and in mirrors. But today I had a very interesting experience. I went back to the photographer gallery to look at the Leiter show, because there's a lot of his paintings that I had never seen. And he actually, you should all go, he actually even painted on his photograph, and they're quite beautiful. And someone that was very influential for me in the way I looked at color in my career of creating images was at the photo gallery today signing books. And I like to mention Joel Meyerowitz, how influential he's been to me and to many photographers. When I worked with Robbie Muller, we looked over and over again Cape Light and the way he played with color temperature. And he really was a great influence for me for understanding what I responded to in color. So thank you. Why don't you stand? Could you stand so people see who you are?
There you go. Well done.
All right, now.
So it was color, but also framing was like
Yeah.
a massive thing,
Well,
and similar.
Todd didn't want to reference the cinema of the late 40s and 50s, which would have been melodrama or noir, and he wanted to document something of what those times represented for these women. And it was a very austere time. It was just after the war, and there was a certain, how can I say it, there wasn't much of an openness to express what your real emotional feelings were, certainly not dealing with a relationship with another woman. And actually, Patricia Highsmith, who wrote this book, it was her second book. She had success with her first book, Strangers on a Train, and her publisher said, you shouldn't really publish this personal book under your name. So she actually had to publish it under Claire Morgan, and only really acknowledged the book much later in her life. But this was an important book for lesbians because it was one of the earliest books that dealt with the possibility that they could have a successful relationship, that they didn't end up in a sanitarium or in suicide. But I think that if the film works, it's about coming to terms with yourself. It's about a coming of age story, and they happen to be women. And also about the, how can I say, the romantic imagination or the subjectivity of what one goes through. And Todd's always said that the crime in this book was their love. And so she really never left the form that she created of the subjectivity of the criminal mind.
The interesting thing was, and I was only reflecting on it on seeing it, this is the third time I've seen it now, that it's quite possible that the first scene inside the hotel was an afterthought. It wasn't necessarily in the original script. It would have been put in at the end of the film. But what he did, from what I understand, is Todd Haynes cleverly took it apart so you had it at the front and at the end and at a different point in time so that it reflected, did a circular story. And I hadn't thought of that before, but that's true, isn't it? The script didn't have it all at the end.
When Phyllis Nage, who did the adaptation of Patricia Highsmith's novel, she didn't have that framing device in the original screenplay that I'd worked with her on. And when Todd joined the project, he and Phyllis worked very closely. This is the first time that Todd has worked from someone else's screenplay. He's always adapted his own work. So he and Phyllis worked closely on the director's pass, and one of his absolute all-time favorites is Brief Encounter, Love Story. And he was very inspired by that film, and he'd said to Phyllis, look, why don't we try a framing device in Carol? I think it will bring an urgency to the narrative and also help with the shifting points of view that you see in the film, where you start where you see Carol through Teresa's eyes, and then the point of view shifts when Carol becomes a more vulnerable party. And you see Trez from Carol's point of view, as the stronger character. And so they tried borrowing from Brief Encounter, the framing device. And it was written that way. So it was written with half of it at the beginning when that conversation is interrupted, very much like in Brief Encounter, where there's the conversation which is taking place, and then the gossipy neighbor comes and interrupts them both in the tea shop. And then the conversation ends later, and you find out in Carol.
Incredible. It makes the film in a way.
Yeah, it's a
it
brilliant
really
addition.
makes that whole circular path.
Yeah.
Just talk to us a little bit about how Todd got involved. Did you have the script first?
Yeah. Well,
how did it all develop?
I'd done a film with Phyllis Nage called Mrs. Harris, which we did for HBO. That was a single drama with Annette Bening and Ben Kingsley. And when we were filming that, Phyllis said to me, what I really want to do next is an adaptation of Patricia Highsmith's Price of Salt. And I didn't know Price of Salt. I had read all of the Ripley series, and I'd read Strangers on a Train. And I went away and read the novel and was completely bowled over by it, because Patricia Highsmith used all of those tropes of exploring the criminal mind. But as Ed was saying, the criminality in this case was the love between two women. So that's also the criminality, but the other thing that she does is she uses the way that you would just investigate the mind of the killer, typically in the Ripley novels, but here it's the mind of the lover. So every gesture, every move is open to interpretation. Did she look at me like that because she fancies me? Did she look at me like that because she loved me? Is she looking away from me because she no longer loves me or she's interested in me? You know what it's like when you fall in love. You're constantly interpreting. They didn't call. They did call. Maybe they'll call later. Maybe I shouldn't call for another 5 minutes. What does that silence mean? And so Patricia Highsmith did that as well. And I was really drawn to that because I love the Highsmith technique. And, you know, as a woman producer, it was just obviously a story that is so female-centric. With, you know, you have one woman who turns her back on her husband and her child, you know, completely denying every single social conscript that comes with being a woman, particularly in the 1950s. And you have another woman who turns her back on her boyfriend. And at a time when there really wasn't language to express what they were feeling, I mean, Therese says, tell me, I don't know what I think. They're both floundering, and when Carol in the lawyer scene, which was one of my favorites, stands up and she says, may I speak? Yeah. She's in a room which is completely defined by male narrative, the lawyer for the defense, the lawyer for the prosecution, the husband, the psychiatrist report. There's a girl in the corner. And she actually says, if you do not let me speak now, I won't be able to. And it's almost like that moment, that court scene is a metaphor of the film in so many different ways. And I think it's a very clever script because it shows that level of repression and the problems of language and where language comes up against non-language. And for film, it's where Ed and Todd's work, Sandy Powell, Carter Burwell, there is a language in this film which is where other language of words is often absent, I think.
Which is that's what imagery is, and that's what stories are. When you transcend just what's in front of you. So you're constantly implying things around, and that is what we do, and that is such a great example of exactly that. And your relationship with Todd, tell me a little bit about that. I mean, you've done another film. This is very different from...
An abusive relationship.
Oh, is it? Is that
they're
right?
like a married
no,
couple.
I'm kidding. I'm just saying, you know, we've worked 14 years together, so... it's a yin and a yang. I said this before, you know, a lot of times when we disagree, we come up with a compromise that's better than both of our ideas. And I give this example.
That's the best, that's collaboration.
Yeah, well, at the time, you don't think it's collaboration.
It's
but
just a fight.
like the last scene, all right, he wanted to do that hand hold, you know, when they're walking to each other. And you know, when you bring her in, it's in this long dolly shot and a move in.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to keep that. You know, I thought you could go back and forth between this
Yeah.
move.
It was at 50 frames, wasn't it? You did it, you slowed it.
And that was like 30 frames, or
30.
you know, I couldn't go any further because I didn't have the light. But anyway, so I said, all right, Todd, the operator can be let him be handhold, but let me at least put him on the dolly. So there's some transition.
Yeah, it's not boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, and that's what we did.
Yeah.
you know, we didn't stabilize. I didn't think about stabilization, but we didn't have the budget for stabilization. But so we put the operator on the dolly, and it was a rug, so it wasn't that smooth anyway. And then he even wanted at the end, he wanted to zoom in and to zoom out. So that was like another complication.
That's against the rules.
But people, you know, say somehow it worked.
It's a fascinating relationship for me witnessing it, because I think that you and Todd just do your best work together and constantly pushing each other right to the limit. And on this film, in a very, very, we had a very limited shooting period, so it was
Well, that's
very,
incredibly
it's
true.
tough.
You know, what is it, 36 days?
35. We had 34 days.
34 days.
To film it in.
Costume.
And
So,
yeah,
you know, everybody
setting
takes
the
forever to get
cars.
ready.
Yeah, it was very challenging from that, but they would, you know, seemingly bicker all the time, but it was just ideas constantly butting up against each other about
that's good,
ideas
that's
and what
good.
they could do, and striving to go further and
It's gotta
further,
be.
and can we...
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I could only do it with the crew I have, that I've worked with these guys for 10 or
Amazing.
15 years, and
Well, you get John DeBlau, the gaffer, comes out of retirement for Ed. He's like, I'm retired. I'm living in Long Island. I got my boat. I said, well, Ed says you're going to do the movie. Ah, all right. I'll come out of retirement. I'm not doing it again, though.
that's right.
And then he turns up, and he's,
He's incredible.
yeah, you've got an incredible team of
So, I mean, what would be
guys.
the difference between your relationship with Todd and Steven Soderbergh, which you've worked with
Twice.
twice?
I never thought of that one. Well, I'll tell you one example. Aaron Brockovich, he said, we did the Limey, so that was like off the cuff. That was very free, and you know. So he said, look, we're going to do this film, Aaron Brockovich. I don't want to see any trucks, no trucks. I go, what? All right. So we just hid the trucks 2 blocks away. He knew there were trucks. The lights, the grips, or the electricians all complained they had to carry the lights 2 blocks away. And we still had lights, but he would always go, oh, 1 light. So, you know, it was, I understood what he was saying. He wanted the film to be naturalistic. He didn't want to like over produce it visually. And in this film too, you know, I look at the windows, they're burning out, you know, like, that's why I couldn't start like ending it, then filling in light. It would have looked more
and as the light
artificial.
goes up and down, the NDs change all the time.
Yeah, I didn't have that kind of time,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Well,
So-
no, 34 days you don't.
And a lot of, I mean, the hardest part of this film was when we shoot with those reflections. I really don't, I just pray, because I just kind of estimate, like I'm going to keep it 2 stops down in the interior and just let the outside go. So, you know, you on a monitor, you never can see what that image is. I don't even know if you could digitally, but I certainly can't with an analog monitor on the camera. Like the shot, my favorite shot is when she goes into the office at New Year's to get that telegram. I mean, I was like, oh my God, you know, I'm not going to see anything either exterior or inside, because it was so extreme. But I believe that because it was film, I had more dynamic range.
And I mean, watching the rushes was, Todd doesn't watch any rushes while he's filming. He doesn't see anything until the end. And it was incredibly challenging, because there's only 1 lab left in New York. So we were shipping then.
Now there's none.
Well, there's none in LA. Is there still one?
No, there's one in LA.
There's one in
none
LA
in
and
New
none
York.
in New York. So by the time we flew this film on the plane from Cincinnati, Ohio, which is a 3.5-hour flight back to New York, they don't have a day bath anymore. They only have a night bath. So sometimes you'd miss the night bath, or frequently, and so then there's no day bath, so then you have to wait till it goes into the next night bath to be developed, and then you've got to have the digital stuff shipped back. So you've got a 2 or 3 day delay before we were seeing.
We saw weeklies, and then I
anything,
only
so-
saw it with my.
Yeah, it
But
was pretty
that's why
challenging.
you get
assistant.
that's why you get experience that knows, you know, what he's getting. But
Hopefully.
I mean, was that I mean, was that ever a question for you, Liz? 16 mil digital?
No, you know,
you know,
if
oh,
you if you're working with, you know, Todd, Ed, Sandy, and there's a vision for the film, for me, you're making a Todd Haynes film. And he, I think, is one of the most important contemporary American filmmakers, and he's really pushed back the envelope since his very first film, Karen Carpenter Superstar. So when he comes to you as a producer and says, I want to shoot on Super 16, you have to find a way to make that happen, because I think, you know, that Todd is really does, and I don't use it lightly, I think he surrounds himself by artists, and we just had to figure out a way.
You can tell.
And it was, you know, it was challenging. It was challenging with the financiers. It was challenging. We had some real problems. The first few days we started filming, the lab report that came back was just soft focus, soft focus, soft focus. Day 2, soft focus, soft focus, soft focus. And we were shooting like that. We didn't have, you know, we couldn't stop. Ed couldn't fly back to New York. We couldn't, well, you know, we didn't know what the problem was. I mean, we were shooting the scene inside the house with, when Kate Blanchett and Sarah Paulson are sitting in the window ledge and having a cup of tea. And the car comes by and the headlights shine through the window, and they go down the stairs together. There's that wonderful moment where they embrace hands across each other's back. And Ed, poor Ed, was on the phone endlessly to the lab, to the camera house, just trying to find out what the problem was. Was it a problem with the emulsion? Was it a problem with the camera? Was it a problem with the digital, with the transfer? Finally, you tracked it back to the assistant. The assistant.
Well, no, I mean, everybody should know this. The witness mark on zoom lenses are not infinity. You have to go past the witness mark. So he set up his scales at infinity at the witness mark, and it threw everything off about 20 feet. And where I saw that was actually the first days was the exterior scene, where a tree in the foreground would be sharp, but the people were just a little out. And I was shooting around f4. And then the other problem that I couldn't figure out is the slates were sharp. Well, the slates were sharp because he did that by eye focus. So it was this crazy, and then the technician came out from Aeroflex in New York, and he spent like 3 days going through everything, changing bodies, changing lenses. And then when he went back, he said, how did you set up infinity? And it hit me. And that was what the problem was.
Yeah. But to be working so far away from your lab, 3.5 hours by plane, and we were working in a place that doesn't have, you know, we were shooting Cincinnati, Ohio for New York, which offered so much creatively, plus they had an incredible tax credit, so it meant we could actually film the movie because it gave us a piece of the finance. But there really is no infrastructure to speak of.
And Cincinnati looks like 1950s.
Yeah, it really does. You know, the economic downturn in America that hit all of those manufacturing towns, that great swathe, I mean, they're all in a way a variation on a theme of Detroit. So in terms of the socioeconomics, it's very depressing. But if you're a film crew coming in, they've been preserved in aspect because there's been, I mean, maybe 1 or 2 blocks were gentrified of that whole area, but the rest is pretty much slums, you know, that have not been touched since people left and moved to the suburbs.
So you also produced this year another incredibly visual film, Youth, with Paolo. And so are you a creative producer? I mean, do you find the creative projects that are close to your heart, and then figure out how you get the money?
Yeah.
Or is it the other way around, or is it a mixture of both?
No, pretty much, I'd say 95% of the projects that my partner Stephen Woolley and I make are things that we develop in-house. And, you know, we're attracted to them for some reason. They challenge on some level, you know, creatively or socially or politically. That's what we try and do, subvert genre or something. You know, not all of them work. Some of them do. I think all of them try and challenge on some level. And, you know, you really have to feel, it's such a cliche to say, but to feel passionate about them, because particularly now in the current marketplace where viewing habits are changing and old finance models are, you know, eroding like quicksands. So you have to feel incredibly passionate about something to want to get it up and get it running. I mean, in the case of the Paolo Sorrentino, weirdly, it was the casting director on Carol who, she was the assistant to Juliet Taylor when Stephen and Neil Jordan made Interview with the Vampire. And I gave her her first casting director job on a film I did with Terence Davis called The Neon Bible with Jenna Rollins. So she cast that, and then I guess I said to Christine, you should check her out, and she then became Todd Haynes' casting director. So then when we were working together on Carol, she rang me and she said, hey, Paolo's looking for a UK producer. Would you be interested? And it's like, wow, Paolo Sorrentino. Yeah,
of course,
so
and it's beautiful.
they were looking at a few people in the UK, but they sent us the script and we read it, and I just said to Stephen, you know what, we just have to get on a plane and fly to Rome. Because the guys, we'd kill to work with Sorrentino.
Another genius.
So yeah, another
You only
genius.
work with
Well, it was
geniuses.
like this, I had to I just flew to Zurich to get the rights to the novel. Sometimes you just have to be in someone's face. So we flew over to Rome and had lunch with Paolo and his producers, and that was it. It started there. So
Brilliant.
yeah.
So I think let's throw it to the audience and see if there are any questions that you'd like to ask either Elizabeth or Ed. This foreground here, please.
I don't have a question. I have a comment that I...
Oh, please, there's a microphone there.
Oh, I don't have a question as much as an observation about the space in the film that I think really went along with the color to give it that atmosphere of the 50s. And that is, at that period, we weren't using wide-angle lenses. Everybody was using a 50 or a 90, and the intimacy of the space in the film, along with the color and through the windows and the rain, all of that made it so powerfully real to me. I was immediately back in that period. And I think it's easy to talk about the color and color film and all, but really I think space, the plastic qualities of space are very important to shape the drama.
And also the complexity of the reflections, sometimes in the street scenes, where you had somebody with a ladder on that side, all reflected, and somebody else crisscrossing, and the foreground, and somebody behind window. There's a huge complexity of different layers,
Yes, well,
which is sensational.
You have a fearless DP who's willing to fragment the film and fragment the space and break up the image. And it brings another layer of life and vitality to it that's very subtle, but it's there all the time. And it builds over the length of the film so that when it ends, you feel like you've not only walked out of the film, but you've left a time period.
Exactly.
Very powerful.
Exactly. I agree with you entirely.
Subtle.
Anybody else?
I just have a quick question for Ed. If you could talk a little bit about all the automobile work, the car work, how much was practical, how much might have been processed?
Well, let's say the night shots, with her in the taxi. I wanted to do that in the studio. It was like freezing. It was like one of the bitterest winters. It was 2014 in record in Cincinnati.
It was the Arctic Vortex year.
And
so
Todd
cold.
wanted to shoot it like a lot of directors for real because they always think it's better if it's real. So obviously I had to create a whole lighting rig on a camera, on a platform on a insert car as if I was in a studio. But it is true, it picked up ambient light in different places in the reflections that, help the believability. And kind of to respond what you were saying, Joel, about why maybe it can work is there's an entrapment. When you look at Saul Leiter's work, he's entrapping people in windows, in door frames, partially viewing the image. And that fit emotionally to who these characters are. They're not seeing themselves totally. So we as the viewers looking in and them looking out creates the emotional quality of what you're looking at. And that's what we all strive as cinematographers here, and with directors, is how we find the language to enter the interior world of the characters. And that's what we do as image makers.
Ed,
One second.
Sorry, right.
Dick's just going to
Dick,
ask a question, and then we'll give you the mic.
Sorry.
Ed, in terms of what you've just said, I was really intrigued by a lot of the framing decisions that were made.
A lot of the what?
Framing.
Oh, framing, yeah.
For instance, that first meal they have together, where Therese orders the same, exactly the same as Carol. You put Therese in the corner of the frame like she was a frightened rabbit, and it made Carol almost predatory.
Right.
She was forced to, and the reverse was the same. Large Carol in the foreground, and small Therese sitting. Did you and Todd come to that together, or is that something that he would dictate to you?
No, that was something we were playing. We wanted to feel like there was an entrapment, one, but two, there's an outside world to them that they're not part of. And so that's when we started to play with these, we call it short-siding the frame, where you're not balancing the frame in the way, you look right and then you have more room on the left, So we wanted to break the frame that way. And the operator, I have Craig Hagenson is a great operator, and he does something else that's really interesting. Is like he'll start with someone in the frame, and then he lets them almost get 3/4 to the other side of the frame, and I don't know how he's able to do it, but when the camera stops, the person doesn't go out of the frame. He just has that, and you're a great operator, but he just has that innate sense of rhythm and timing to the image. But I think we played with the framing, not just like to make it, I don't know, aesthetically interesting, but we felt that there was that you could entrap them, but also that I always like the idea, and still photographers always do this, that the environment is a statement about their emotions.
Inner self.
Yeah. And so like doing that because when it was offset, you did see people in the distance, or the waiter over here. There was something in the frame. It just was a negative space, but it was, I don't know, you just do it at the time, and then you figure it out later why you do it.
Yeah, but also, Ed,
you can intellectualize it now. But
it was also the headroom in that scene. I mean, it was there in a lot of other scenes, but there was so much headroom, so much classical headroom. The eyes in the center of the frame.
Right.
It didn't look arbitrary. It looked really, the film felt like that, very classical in terms of the headroom.
I don't think anything you did in there, was arbitrary. The whole film was shot listed before you began by Todd. You discussed everything. Every shot list was revised every Sunday. That scene in the restaurant took a full day and some to shoot that.
It was more performance, never the camera.
No, it wasn't the camera. You didn't leave anything to chance.
No, but not framing. He would have a shot list, but then he would go in every day and be open. He had a shot list, so he knew, because a lot of his shots aren't about coverage. It's the scene takes place in this shot, but then he'll find it on the set.
And some inside the cars and outside the cars. In the cut, the light comes across the face just at the right time,
Well,
was
that's
that just
by
doing it
chance.
over and over?
Oh, well, you mean at night or the days?
At night, and some of it during the
Well,
day.
day is all real light. I never had lights. I
just kept on
I
going
gave
with the
that
same.
up on Aaron
And then you just cut the
Brockovich
best
once
bit.
I discovered that Kodak has a negative that you can have 4 or 5 stops over and 3 stops under, and you can have an image. I never, because I hate car lights. I do it at night, obviously. Actually, for some reason, it's my apology, the projector was a little bright. It should have been about 3 points dark, about a third. It was a little bright, this print, but.
I'm sorry.
Always the camera.
The guy over there is not very happy. Any more questions? So there's a question in the back there. Yeah.
Yes, I was interested in the opening shot. It seemed so smooth, and I thought this has to be a Steadicam. And then it went up in the air, so then I was wondering if you could tell us what you shot it on.
Who Dick works with too, my grip, Jim McMillan is brilliant. And so that was obviously a complicated shot. Like, how are we going to do that? We can't run, obviously, track across the street because we got cars going by, and we didn't have a stabilizer. I don't even think I knew about stabilization then. It was a Luma crane, a 30-foot Luma crane on a camera car. And because it went on a 45-degree angle, the cars could pass us. And we got that.
But telescopically?
Yeah,
the one that-
telescopic.
yeah,
So we're moving it all the time. And that grate, well, you know, it's supposed to be New York. We just laid a piece of a grate on the sidewalk, and we didn't have to do a digital effect there. That was the real, and then where you go and you look like it's a subway, that was just a
door, glass
a doorway that I put fluorescent in to give it a feeling like it was,
There's nothing
you know,
down there.
nothing down there, right? And then now I always talk about the things I didn't do that I didn't like is when we're craning up, I'm hitting the reflection. You know, I'm hitting a flare from my light up there, and then I also hate at night when you're shooting.
But Dick loved it. He said the other day he loved it.
I know. All right. Yeah. All right.
Maybe
But then the other, that's good. But
Leave
then
that
the
for
other
another
thing
time.
is, I got to say what it is, you know, whatever. But it's my problem. But I hate when you shoot at night and they don't have enough lights, or because the director says now we want to shoot 8 blocks, and when he scouted it, it was only 4. So you lose light in the background. So I lost light in the back. That's why I like to work very low light in the streets at night, so I can pick up the ambient light. Or we have putt-putts that you can run around the corner and just, you know, make
We
it.
have them too.
Oh, you have those
Yeah,
too?
yeah,
They speak English here too, don't they?
Any other questions out there? Well, I'd like to thank very much Ed and Liz for a great film, and all the best of luck for the BAFTAs.
Well,
Thank you.
thank
Well,
you.
it's nice
And
to see you.